2017 has been an interesting year for Thomas fans, hasn't it? I mean, there have been several fans saying that Season 21 of Thomas & Friends has been very underwhelming compared to Season 20, even going as far to say it was the worst season since Season 16. And honestly, I don't get all this complaining.
Me neither, but I do think we should shed a little light in the season. But first, a history lesson. A history that everyone knows.
And I would like to lead the discussion off, if that's okay.
Okay then, Matt. Before we get to Season 21 proper, what can we say about the Miller era?
Miller era?
You know, when Sharon Miller was head writer for the show?
Oh.
You don't like it, do you?
In the words of the famous pony? Nope.
Well, then again, does anybody?
Not me.
Me neither.
Alas, we might as well give our opinions of it.
Right.
Too true.
The Miller era of Thomas & Friends was interesting. It was great for the show's target audience and very young children, but was also a very dark time for the older fans in the fan base.
The animation at the time was done by Nitrogen Studios, run by husband and wife team Greg Tiernan and Nicole Stinn, very well known for projects like Sausage Party, The God of War, Troll Hunters, and the yet-to-be-released film adaptation of Scary Girl. Prior to art productions taking over around 2012, Hutchins' animation was generally well received among the fandom. Mostly. But good visuals do not equal a good film or TV show.
Despite two specials being rather decent, the Miller Nitrogen era as a whole would be considered among the worst of the worst in the history of Thomas & Friends. Just look at these clips and you'll see what I mean.
The fastest track to the end of the field is wet and muddy. I shall take the long track there and stay clean for the photographer.
My turn to make you laugh now, Charlie. Boo! That was a good one, Thomas!
Why do you do this? You're so stupid! Stupid! Oh, and let's not forget.
Behind the trucks, Thomas watched.
I'll make Gordon laugh this time.
Oh
Here I
my
go.
goodness! My eyes! They burn!
Cranky dropped the crates of fireworks, and with a crash and a bang, the crates broke open. Fireworks fizzed and whizzed everywhere.
Bust my buffers! I didn't want that to happen.
You're so stupid!
I am Gordon. I am fastest and best, and I pull the express.
What is this crap?
I'm the rescue engine on Sodor for the day. I'm a very busy engine. Stand back, watch out, make way!
Make it stop! Oh, make it stop!
Hurry to the country show. Tell your friends, and don't be slow.
You're an idiot!
Just then, Charlie chuffed cheerily in. Good morning, Charlie.
Hello, Edward. You want to hear a good joke?
No!
Where do crocodiles keep their money?
I don't know.
In a riverbank.
You suck!
I think you guys get the point, right? Yeah, I thought so.
Now, some of the stuff present in the episodes back then were as followed. Engine gets job for the day. Engine does something different relating to the job. Engine screws up 3 times before he or she realizes what they're doing is wrong. Engine gets in trouble with Sir Topham Hatt. Engine goes, "It's all my fault." Engine admits flaws. Engine fixes things right. All is happy. The end. And to add insult to injury, the writers felt it necessary to include a rhyming dialogue in nearly every episode. How much rhyming, you may ask? Enough rhyming to make Dr. Seuss roll in his grave, that's how much!
As if the rhyming wasn't bad enough, they even forced in discriminatory behavior from the steam engines against the diesels. Granted, there was a rivalry between both groups in the early days, but that's all it was, a rivalry. Here, it's taken up to 11. Case in point.
No, Diesel. I'm sure Sir Topham Hatt means a really useful steamy. You'll never be that.
Yeah, very kid-friendly, isn't it?
Disgraceful, said Gordon.
Disgusting, put in James.
Despicable,
finished Henry.
Another issue would be the characters introduced in this era. Many of the new characters weren't very popular with some fans due to their overbearing, annoying, gimmicky personalities. While a few of those characters would later be redeemed in the season 17 onward era, some were unsalvageable. Unfortunately, none of the shown ones were as terrible as Damn and their so-called Island of Fun.
One biff, one bash, and there's never a crash.
That's right!
And yet another low point are the personality changes for some of the already present characters.
Case in point, Edward and Toby. How they went from being wise old engines to outright, I don't even know, is beyond me.
And then you have the engine who's currently my favorite in the show, Percy. Dear God, what have they done to the little green guy? He dumbed him down so much that he makes Homer Simpson, Patrick Starr, and Ed from Ed, Ed and Eddie look like master's degree graduates.
But Thomas himself? Oh, he was hit the hardest of all.
Oh, don't even get me started on how stupidly written the little blue bastard was. At best, Thomas was shoehorned into stories where he didn't belong or had too many starring roles in one season. At worst, he was an outright idiot that makes Homestar Runner look intelligent by comparison.
But not just an idiot, but the king of all idiots.
I'm sure my whistle isn't wonky. I must race to Farmer McColl's.
Thomas!
But thankfully, all that was to change in 2012.
When Sharon Miller wrote the script for Blue Mountain Mystery, a new writer showed up and made some changes to said script.
His name is Andrew Brenner, the one person many people of the fandom called the almighty god amongst the writing team. Or something like that.
And why is that? Because he'd actually been involved with Thomas as early as 1987, adapting the first 2 seasons for magazine stories, as well as writing his own originals that formed the basis for sub-season free stories like Thomas Gets Bumped, One Good Turn, Percy James and the Fruitful Day, and most infamously, Henry's Forest.
Rule 55. You can't do it.
Shut up, Rev. That joke is so 2011.
Yes, part of the reason why the episode is so infamous is because of Rule 55. I'm not gonna pretend to know anything about how an actual railway works, let alone an actual British railway, but despite my feeling of nostalgia towards the first 3 seasons, I can understand Mr. Audrey's disdain towards some of these episodes, especially when some of the adaptations tend to be hit or miss when compared to the first 2.
Mind my eyes, he grumbled.
Either way, word eventually came out that Sharon Miller had stepped down as head writer and was replaced by that man, although Miss Miller remained voice director.
Despite many fans being highly critical towards Sharon's writing, us included, her voice directing skills really shone from Blue Mountain Mystery onward. Through her, we've had several talented people lending their voices to the series, including such A-list celebrities as Eddie Redmayne, Tina Turner, and Hugh Bonneville to name a few. Whether you like her as a writer or not, you have to give her credit where credit is due, albeit in an entirely different field.
And now we come to Season 17. At the time the series came out, it was generally regarded as the show's best in Season 7. The animation wasn't the best at the time, but the stories were vastly improved with Brenner and co. on board. It gave redemption to some previously unlikable or forgettable characters, and even brought forth the return of fan favorites like Bill and Ben, as well as our number 8 pannier tank, Montague, aka Duck. The season also significantly toned down Thomas's spotlight stealing habits, and its successive Italian special, King of the Railway, helped significantly with its lore.
And then came Season 18 and Tale of the Brave. The former seemed to cement the show's reputation as back to normal, or as normal as it could be. The latter was acknowledged as the series' best special to date.
Sadly, not every fan agreed Tale of the Brave was the best. If anything, a lot of them disliked it for reasons that were nitpicky and or petty. They didn't care about Percy's character development and whined that he was a big crybaby. They thought James was an outright bully to the little green guy, and yet they were the same people who griped about the characters in the Miller era for being too nice. They even accused the new characters, even Gator, for feeling pointless to the plot and that it was simply made just for the merchandise. All of these accusations are a load of garbage if you ask me, but our reactions to said special should have been a red flag, in hindsight, to the behavior Thomas fans display right now.
Thankfully, we free like Tale of the Brave lots, and easily my favorite bit of the special was Emily's small part.
Be careful out there, James. Monsters can be very hard to see in the dark. Gator may have a sloping water tank, James, but that's nothing to be frightened of.
but it was easily the finest hour for her character to that point after being derailed severely in seasons 8 through 12, and is a big reason she is one of my fictional character crushes as of now.
Of course, Matt. Of course. Now, Tale of the Brave was a vastly underrated special, but to be fair, it was overshadowed by Awesomeness the following year, when we got not one, but 2 Thomas specials to celebrate Thomas's 70th anniversary in 2015. The first of these, The Adventure Begins, was a 45-minute adaptation of the first 2 Railway Series books in CGI format. The first adaptation in 20 years, no less. And if that wasn't enough, we got probably the most epic Thomas special to date, Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure. It was a treat for several fans, as it was the introduction to the small Rayleigh engines in the TV series, as well as the return of Donald and Douglas, Daisy, and several pack members in full CGI. Not only that, but it brought in several big-name talents like Eddie Redmayne, Jamie Campbell-Bower, and the late John Hurt, may rest in peace.
Meanwhile, Season 19 was considered weaker than the previous 2 seasons, but it still remained quite popular with the fandom. Best of all, it also introduced possibly the first 2-part episode to the show, Diesel's Ghostly Christmas.
However, to the fans, Season 19 had nothing on 20. It was a huge season, not just in episode quantity. We got the return of Glenn, Judy, and Jerome from The Adventure Begins. Daisy had more screen time and character than she did in 18 seasons previous. The animation was of top quality. Chris Renshaw's music was enjoyable to listen to. And most of all, the first episode since Season 4 to be adapted straight out of the books with the Arlesdale Trio. But if there's a complaint I had with Season 20, it's that this, along with Adventure Begins and Lost Treasure, turned fans into spoiled entitled brats, thinking the show should be about them and not the target audience. You know, kids.
Hey Zach, maybe calling fans spoiled entitled brats isn't such a good idea.
Yeah, because not all fans are like that, you know.
I know that, but I'm not saying every fan in general is a brat. I'm not stupid enough to lump them all into one category.
Anyway, the first special to really feel the divided backlash was the 2016 special, Thomas and the Great Railway Show, the musical. I mean, The Great Race.
That special was a load of rubbish.
No, it wasn't.
Well, how do you explain the story being a complete mess? Not to mention how unsympathetic Thomas was. The international engines, barring Scotsman, were practically wastes of animation for 2 years, and the moral was pretty much shoved down your throat. And that's not even mentioning how the Gordon subplot was completely wasted. It felt like it was padded out to an hour, making the whole thing feel confused. It's the Legend of Everfree of Thomas specials.
True enough, Thomas was an utter twit, but I still found the international characters to be good despite only a few of them speaking, a number of the songs to be catchy, and the specials to be great overall.
It was practically worse than Day of the Diesels.
At least The Great Race does not have racism against diesels.
If there was ever a reason you liked it, it's because of these specific ones.
I'm very sorry. I truly never meant to bump into you. I simply didn't realize you were behind me.
Everybody back on the ship. Is somebody missing?
Oh, you're not Gordon?
Do I look like a Gordon? My name is Frida. And you have to sort them into flatbeds, boxcars, and tankers, arranging 3 of each type on your sidings, plus a brake van and... Are you listening, Thomas? You need to be ready.
Shut up! That's not true! Even though it's only part of the reason I like it.
Mike, back me up here.
I'd really rather not take sides.
So, yeah. Overall reception was mixed at best.
Wait, you see? This is what I'm talking about here.
Huh?
You're both part of the divide. Zach, you hate the special. Matt, you love it. There isn't any middle ground in your arguments about it, but that's okay. I mean, not everyone has to like the same things, you know.
But I thought you said you didn't like The Great Race either, Mike.
What?
What? Oh! Let's just move on, please.
Finally, we come to Journey Beyond Sodor. Mike and I have already covered it in full, so to sum up, it's pretty much the most overhated Thomas special, not to mention the most underrated. Want to know our full opinions on it? Go and watch episode 2. If you'd rather check it out now and come back, that's fine too. Don't worry, I'll give you time.
Do 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 do
Boy, you cut that out!
You'll have to excuse them. They're idiots.
Anyway, Journey Beyond Sodor.
Well, hang on. I didn't even partake in that review.
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
So, Matt, what are your thoughts on that particular special?
I didn't really like it very much.
What?
I felt it just didn't have the spark the last few specials had. Sure, it had a few new things and characters introduced, but...
But what?
I'm sorry, but the special just wasn't what I was expecting or hoping for it to be.
Sorry to hear that, man. But anyway, Journey Beyond Sodor was hated for seemingly stupid reasons. But now we get to the real subject of this video, Season 21.
We're not here to change anyone's opinions on Season 21. Whether you liked or disliked the season is your business. But offhand, I could think of 3 reasons why people would dislike this season. And we're going to discuss these opinions and whether or not we agree with them.
There are 18 episodes in this season, as opposed to the usual 20 odd episodes, thus making it the shortest season in the show to date. But just because a season has fewer episodes than others does not necessarily make the season terrible. For an example, look at Season 3 of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. All other seasons of the show had 26 episodes, whereas Season 3 only had 13, half the amount of any other season to date. That does not strictly mean that Season 3 sucks. I actually thought it had a lot of good episodes, Too Many Pinkie Pies, Keep Calm and Fly On, and the infamous Magical Mystery Cure to name a few. The same can be said about Season 21 of Thomas. Just because it has less episodes than other seasons doesn't automatically mean the season as a whole sucks. After all, quality over quantity.
Sadly, that has a bit of a consequence. A number of plot lines established earlier in the season, or Season 20, were never seen being completed. One of my favorite examples is Rosie's repaint and new job. Mattel had earlier hyped her return and role in a later episode, but then suddenly dropped it without warning. This was because it was revealed that it, along with 7 other episodes slated for Season 21, was cut from the season.
And why? To hype up Big World, Big Adventures. I'm not going to look negatively on the reboot for cutting 8 episodes, but I will look negatively on Mattel for shooting themselves in the foot. Heck, the ankle's likely gone by now.
And their choices are what's causing all the controversy in the fandom.
Unless Big World, Big Adventures has salvaged those lost episodes, those are 8 scripts up in smoke, and a wasted opportunity with finishing up the plot lines already established.
Yeah, but it probably wouldn't matter if seasons 13 through 16 had 26 episodes each. They'd still be pretty bad.
Not to mention how there's little distinction between all 4 of them. And speaking of distinction, unlike the Nitrogen seasons, the Arc and Jam-filled seasons each have their own unique style to them, just like how all of Queen's albums are different from each other. I mean, if you play 1975's A Night at the Opera and 1989's The Miracle back to back, there's quite a difference between them.
Honestly, for seasons 13 through 16, I cannot even tell.
Yeah, me neither.
With season 17, however, it was the start of a return to form with the show. The writing had shown signs of great improvement.
For one thing, they didn't have the rhyming and alliteration constantly shoved down your throat, and even though there were some episodes with the Three Strikes formula, it was nowhere near as painful.
Thank the heavens for that. And some character personalities were fixed too.
Yeah, season 17 was very special. Keep in mind, this was back when literally anything could have been an improvement. And for what we got, I'd honestly argue that this was the best season since season 7. And to this day, I consider it a very underrated season. Then we come to season 18, which continued the good streak from the previous.
Compared to season 17's simple, rustic charm, season 18 felt more traditional with many episodes like Duck and the Slip Coaches and Old Reliable Edward, feeling that they could have come out of the Railway series. Sure, the previous season had the likes of Thomas's Shortcut and the Smelly Kipper, but that season felt more so like the books, and that's saying a lot.
Of course, there were also some minor hiccups along the way.
Right.
What are you guys talking about?
Well, let me show you this. But that, of course, was nothing compared to... We'll come to that later.
Now we come to season 19. While there were several good episodes from that season, there were 3 which just sucked the chrome off of a 57 Chevy bumper. I am of course referring to Henry Spots Trouble, The Other Side of the Mountain, and Rocky Rescue.
The first basically showed why Henry's worrisome character was out of place. The next one was a very bad rewrite of Thomas's Shortcut, and the last made the rescue team look like a bunch of idiots. For many of the problems this season suffered after coming lost treasure when it's meant to take place before, season 19 was far more experimental in its stories.
There's also been some ongoing controversy over Thomas appearing in every episode, which would continue on with season 20. I know some people would probably hate me for this, but here's the thing. I just don't care.
Much as I have complaints of Thomas appearing in every episode, I'm afraid I'm with Mike on that. I mean, Thomas has been established as the main character since day one, so we have to expect for him to turn up at some point, whether we like it or not. But what would you say about some of season 19's experiments, Matt?
I guess one could be from Best Engine Ever, the one where Emily got redesigned for a vision dream of some sort.
Speaking of best episode ever, it was also connected to Salty All at Sea, Den and Dart, and climaxed in No Help at All.
But Emily is at the Steamworks, and Mavis is at the Diesel Works, and I sent Salty to the main.
Don't you just love those little continuity nods?
Another experimental episode we should mention was a two-parter Diesel's Ghostly Christmas. Pretty much every TV show and animation company nowadays has to do their own version of Charles Dickens' classic novel, so it only makes sense that the producers of Thomas did at some point, right?
Yeah, even though it's pretty much been adapted to death at this point.
Perhaps, but I still enjoyed it, didn't you?
Of course I did. Well, I'm sure it wouldn't be the last adaptation, but let's continue.
Now, I've already reviewed the episode last December, so if you want to know what I have to say about it, go and check that out on your own time. But what did you guys think of the concept of a two-part episode?
I thought it was nicely done. It was something I never expected to see.
And now we're on to the big one, Season 20. And boy, what a season that was. So many fan favorites, adventures with old friends and new friends alike, not to mention 3 very special Railway Series adaptations. It was wonderful. So, is it bad for me to say I think it's kind of overrated?
What?
Okay, hear me out. I don't think it's bad per se. I don't think it's as strong a season of Thomas and Friends either. I wouldn't necessarily put it in my top 5.
It's because of this clip, isn't it?
Don't you dare.
He dares.
Hello, Thomas. Guess what I'm going to be doing tomorrow?
Sitting in your shed? No. Working at the waste dump? Taking monkeys to the animal park? Ooh, I know. Going to Misty Island? No.
Why you?
I just don't know what went wrong.
Okay. And I thought this moment was awkward.
Totally worth it, man. How's about you in season 20, Matt?
You kidding, Zach? I really enjoyed that season. Sure, it had a few letdowns, but it was still a rockin' series.
You sure it's not because of these episodes?
Maybe. Then again, that could not be the reason. Anyway, this was not only the first season since the 4th to adapt directly from the books, but it's also the last season to be animated by ARC prior to becoming bankrupt and reopening as Jam-Filled Toronto.
Yeah, despite having more duds than the other seasons, I don't think season 20 is that bad. Nowhere near one of the best, but still a good season all the same.
Ah, Mike, you're back. Feeling better?
Yeah, I think so. Just don't ever bring up that episode featuring that murderized bitch clutch again, I swear to God!
Okay, I get the point. Where were we again? Oh yeah, season 20. Basically goes all out with its storytelling, from the aforementioned Railway Series adaptations, tying up loose ends from The Adventure Begins, developing characters in ways we never imagined, and finally ridding Henry of his worrisome personality. Heck, it's a complete showcase to how diverse the Sodor crew is.
And so we come to season 21. As has been stated before, this is Jam-Filled's first season with the show after ARC Productions filed for bankruptcy in 2016. So, how does it hold up in comparison to the other seasons?
Well, compared to the other 4 seasons that came before it, season 21 is a little more modern.
And especially more controversial.
So what is it about this season that makes it so controversial?
Well, the bouncing from Journey Beyond Sodor is present, not in huge doses, but it's still there. It's shorter, and showcases things that are to come in the future with big world, big adventures. Like that.
And then there's the faster pacing in stories like Hasty Hannah, as well as the visual enhancement in storytelling like New Crane on the Dock and Philip's Number. But does the foreshadowing make season 21 bad as a whole? I'm going to say no. I mean, look at Philip's number. There's a sequence where the Charleston trucks form the number 68. There's no special effects there to tell us it's a fantasy. The aim is we're expecting us, as the audience, to fill in the gaps. Not to mention Philip is a childlike character. His viewpoint's a little more exaggerated. Yes, I actually like him as a character. He's getting too much of a bum rap lately.
Much of which stemmed from his first appearances in season 19.
Unfortunately, he's received character development from the last 2 seasons, and yet certain fans ignore that and even complain about him to the point they think he's replacing Percy in the STEAM team.
Probably because the fans hate Philip with a passion. Personally, I believe the whole replacing Percy rumor is a bunch of junk.
Not to mention Toby being replaced as well.
Of course. Whoever started that one should be ashamed of himself.
Are people seriously going with this crap again?
Right so, man.
Well, in any case, unlike quite a few other people, Philip is a character that has very much grown on me over time. Like Starlight Glimmer, whom I've talked about last time, Philip is another character who gets lambasted for the wrong reasons. And as far as I'm concerned, anyone who's saying that he is replacing Percy in the STEAM team is, to put it bluntly, stupid. For one thing, Philip is a diesel engine, so having him in the STEAM team, which is made primarily of steam engines, would make no sense whatsoever. And secondly, if Percy was to be replaced, why would he be in the intro for Big World Big Adventures? So yeah, that's all I have to say on that matter.
Okay, of the 3 reasons we gave so far, this is probably the most controversial one. But since it's a major subject regarding Season 21, we can't pass up talking about the Shedward episode.
The Shed for Edward is basically the direct follow-up to the fastest red engine on Sodor. After James's accidented with Sheds, a few engines are reassigned to different sleeping locations, and Edward, being one of them, sleeps at Wellsworth with Philip. Because of Philip's chattering, Edward is unable to sleep, so he tries sleeping in other areas but is constantly disturbed at night to the point he nearly has an accident with Percy. Philip, realizing where he's messed up, promises to keep quiet at night, and although the sheds at Timoth have been repaired, Edward decides to relocate to Wellsworth with Philip since it's closer to his branch line. And cue fans jumping to worst case scenarios by naturally taking in the details.
Unlike the last 2 options, I can kind of understand why fans would be upset about this one. After all, Edward was the first character that the Reverend Onge created and one of the most beloved characters throughout the series. But on the other hand, if Edward was still part of the main cast, his character would continue flip-flopping between one thing or the other, which can be quite frustrating in and of itself. Back in 2004, when the STEAM team concept was materialized, Duck was originally going to be the 8th member, but was eventually dropped in favor of a female character, Emily. Understandably, this upset several fans back in the day, at least until he returned in Season 17. Had Duck been a member of the STEAM team as initially planned, I don't even want to think of how his character would have been like. The same can be said about Edward. If you ask me whether I'd want him to not be a main character but still keep his proper Railsers persona restored, or for him to be part of the core cast and be written out of character for the sake of the plot, I know which one I would choose. My point is, I don't have a problem with Edward no longer being a member of the STEAM team. If anything, him moving to Wellsworth would be the most logical choice as far as I'm concerned, given that it's on his branch line that runs to Brendam Docks.
If you ask me, I honestly couldn't blame that many older fans out there are both angry and confused over Edward leaving the STEAM team. However, I do agree that many people are blowing it out of proportion, like taking their anger out on Philip and making up rumors that he's going to be replacing Percy and all of that junk.
There's not a whole lot I can say that hasn't been said against the overreacting detractors, but it does vaguely remind me of when Starlight Glimmer first joined the main cast of MLP. Sure, it was controversial, but at least fans ought to be grateful she never replaced any pony in the main cast. On the Thomas side of things, fans are beyond livid that Edward's being replaced, and I use the term loosely of course, by an orange African female tank engine in the STEAM team. A concept which, for the record, is no longer relevant to Thomas, nor should it be.
Sadly, try telling that to Mattel. They insist that the STEAM team concept is still around and is important.
Unfortunately.
Something else we should bring up regarding Season 21 is that this was Mark Morahan's last official season as narrator, as Big World Big Adventures and Season 22 will be told through Thomas's point of view. Many of us growing up with at least one of these narrators would be upset that the concept of a storyteller, which was brought into the show since the beginning, would change from a disembodied voice to the Little Blue Tank Engine, as voiced by John Hasler in the UK and Joseph May in the US, respectively. But as much as I like Mark as a narrator, since season 17, his role has been significantly diminished, as the visuals and characters tell the story just as well. This is especially noticeable with A Shed for Edward, where in Milkshake's airing in the UK, there was no narration. I think the lack of a disembodied voice adds more intensity to the series, as in some of the episodes, the narration kind of bogs it down. At least for me.
No, you're actually right there, Mike. Why do we need a narrator anymore? I mean, look at shows like Bob the Builder and Fireman Sam. Did they need a narrator to tell us the story? No, we can actually see for ourselves without being told what's happening. Sure, Fireman Sam had a bit of narration in the earlier series, but still.
I'm rather upset by the fact that the narrator is no longer being used, and that Thomas himself will be breaking the fourth wall. It makes me fear that Thomas will be treating the viewers like they do not know what's even going on.
Hopefully that's not the case, but we'll just have to see.
If there is one complaint I had about Season 21, the timeline, along with its continuity with JBS, is confusing. The special supposedly takes place after Season 21, but it's pretty obvious there's a disconnect there. In the special, Edward is sleeping at Tidmouth, Carly isn't at Brendam Docks, and James isn't fussed about Rosie's red paint.
In conclusion, we can't honestly call Season 21 a bad season, because barring a few inconsistencies within its timeline, I can't find much wrong with it. It's not the best season, but there are much worse seasons prior to this.
I'll admit there were a few episodes I didn't like, such as Duke in the Dock and Emily in the Middle, but they never reached the lows of Rocky Rescue or Free Steam Engine's Gruff. Sadly, there are many fans across Twitter and YouTube fighting over the season's quality and simply can't agree to disagree, leaving some poor fellas high and dry in the middle unsure as to which side to take.
Unfortunately, the fighting from the fans and many missed opportunities this season had hurt my opinion on it. At this stage, I don't like it, and I think it's the worst series since season 16. Now, before anyone says anything, let me state that it's still better than seasons 8 for 12, and a heck of a lot better than seasons 13 for 16.
Isn't worse too strong a word, Matt?
Well, what do you want me to call it?
How about, the least good of the Brenner era?
Oh, fine. The least good of the Renaissance. Is that better?
Yep, pretty much. So, whether you loved it or hated it, Season 21 is here to stay. If you survived the new things and the fandom wars, feel free to leave your thoughts on the season in the comments below. Yes, we do read all of them, even the stupid ones. I'm Zack Wanzer.
I'm Mike Nicholson.
And I'm Matt St. Onge.
And this has been the Emotions Corner.